What's up, folks? David Soto Jr. here, and this is the David Soto Jr. podcast. What's up, folks? Welcome to episode 36 of the David Soto Jr. podcast. I am your host, David Soto Jr., and today we finna talk about food sensitivity. Now, I used to be a big old blogger about health and wellness, which I kind of am. I don't know. But I used to talk a lot about essentially what I call primitive eating is the paleo diet. I just renamed it, and you can't really, Dr. Lauren Cordain trademarked the term the paleo diet, so I just call it primitive eating. And I thought that I could create my own brand and my own, I don't know. So I call it primitive eating. And a guy named Mark Sisson, he coined the term primal. So I'm like, I'm going to coin the term primitive. Anyways, not coin really, but for this use. The general term, the way to use that covers everything, would be ancestral health. And when we say ancestral health, we talk about being as natural as possible, as much like our Paleolithic ancestors as possible. And in doing so, our body responds quite well to it. And I've been talking about this and blogging and podcasting. Well, not podcasting, but writing books, writing articles, being on, I was podcasting, not my podcast, but I was on other people's podcasts. So I was trying to establish myself as this expert in ancestral health, and thought that I would be big and famous and popular, and I would be on, my books would be bestsellers, and I would be interviewed on the Today Show and Good Morning America and blah, blah, blah. None of that really happened. And as one of the most frustrating things is people think that I'm a dummy, right? People think that I have, because I don't have initials before or after my name, besides Junior, that they can't take my word for it. And it's one of the most frustrating things, because I educated myself. I read books, and what makes the books I read less resourceful, less accurate than the books anybody else reads. I learn by reading and studying and practicing and everything else, just like doctors do, right? Their books are better. They have to be approved. Who approves them? Who writes them? People write those books. Humans like me. There's no different. Just because you took college geometry doesn't make you a better person or smarter person than I am. And I just got frustrated that to see people, and I tried to look up this term, I couldn't find it. I heard somebody use it, and it's when people will only believe people who have some type of designation. Right, whether it's a doctor or certified this or certified that, they'll only believe that. For example, if I say I'm a certified personal trainer, people are like, oh, well, I'm no longer a certified personal trainer. I can guarantee you that I am, and always and was better educated than anybody who is a certified personal trainer, because I was one, right? So I know what had to be done in order to get a certification. In my case, it was a weekend seminar. At least it was a weekend seminar. At least it was 2 days of actual classroom and practical stuff. The same one Jillian Michaels has, who is now thought of an expert in nutrition. Ridiculous. Anyways, so it just got frustrating. And people are like, you didn't back by science, you didn't do this, and I don't believe you. And it just got frustrating to have to deal with people looking at people and saying like, that food, now, not literally, but I can see people that are obese and sick and diabetic and everything, and I'm like, what you're, and like they'll literally be like, I don't know what to do as they eat a burrito. I'm like, not eat that. Like, you're sick and dying because of the food that you're eating, and basically they say like, what do you know? So it got frustrating after years of research and studying, and like daily research and education, self-education, and learn more and more and more and try to pass on this information. And it was just something that I gave up. I especially knew that I wasn't going to do it anymore when I wrote Los Chocolates de Esperanza Diamante. I'm like, I'm an author and I write books. I'm not anybody's coach. I'm not anybody's personal trainer. I'm not anybody's health and wellness guru. I'm just going to write books and enjoy my life. So I got away from it. But what happened was, you know who and I reunited. And when in our reunion, so many things have come. So many things have happened in our separation. One of the things is she found out she got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Now, Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disorder, irritable bowel disorder, and all. Even though I got into paleo and I started it to lose weight and look better and get more self-confidence, in the process of doing that, I learned for years that the paleo diet is essentially a gut healing diet, an anti-inflammatory diet. And I've learned that it can reverse autoimmune diseases. Or it can, I have to be careful what I say, right? Because there's laws against me saying certain things. So I thought, oh, well, when you know who and I get back together, I told her, like, hey, I can help you out. Like, I can help you ease the symptoms of this Crohn's disease and maybe reverse it. I don't know. And I'm not going to be the one to say, you don't have Crohn's disease anymore, but I can help you get through this process, and then maybe a doctor can say you don't have Crohn's disease, or at least flare-ups have gone away and you don't need to take Humira. Jiminy Christmas. Which, upon researching that, wow. But anyways, she was on board, and all I had to do was just cook meals. And she had this giant kitchen, and it was, gas range, and it was awesome, and I loved it. And I really, since the day I showed up the next morning, I cooked every meal for her, and she liked everything except mashed celery root. Very strong. But other than that, anything I cooked, she liked and enjoyed. So it wasn't like I was forcing her to eat anything. We both were really doing good, and I was even doing better than I was out on my own because I had a partner. And so we were really doing well. She had noticed some things. She noticed, what she noticed was inflammation going down, less pain in her hands and stuff like this. So we were doing good, but and to get on board, I was very patient and like, I'll just cook these meals. If you like them, you eat them. If not, we'll try something else. But she really got on board and started getting rid of her foods that were, she started getting rid of her inflammatory foods. So she would throw out her chips and her Cheez-It Grooves, which are like, everybody's like, oh my God, you're going to throw those out? Which it took her a while, like while she was emptying out the Ruffles and crackers and all these things, giving those away. The thing that she held on to for a while was the Cheez-It Grooves, although she did not eat them for the longest time. Then what happened? She got pregnant. And with the pregnancy came the food aversions and the cravings. And one day I made leftover Brussels. I took leftover Brussels sprouts and scrambled them. Now she was totally on board with the Brussels sprouts. She loved them, and she would even say, "Hey, let's have Brussels sprouts tonight." But one morning, I scrambled them with bacon and eggs, and she couldn't eat. And that was essentially the last time she ate Brussels sprouts. The last time we ate really any veggies, not we, but her. And it was the beginning of when my cooking was kind of grossing her out. And not because she's being picky or closed-minded, it's just because all these changes that we're going through with her body. And I was totally cool for the first few months, letting her make her own decisions. But then after the pregnancy and the belly bump and all this other stuff started coming, what is that noise? I didn't let the dogs out because we have 10 inches of snow outside. So, but eventually what happened is I started kind of like being a jerk about it. I'm like, oh my God, you don't eat that. Why can't you eat gluten-free bread? Like, we have it right there. Or, why are you getting that? And all the things I promised I wouldn't do, I started doing. Now, to my defense, is because she's growing my son. Like, my baby is in her, and where she's making him, and I'm kind of concerned about the food that she eats. And then also she complains about certain things that I attribute to certain foods, but she doesn't want to hear it. So I tell you all that to tell you this. I came across an ad for food sensitivity tests, and I was like, oh, this will show her, this will convince her. I'm like, she needs to take this test. And really the only way I thought she would take it is if I was taking it too. So I ordered 2. And my attitude towards it was, I already know the foods I'm sensitive to, so what's the big deal? But I'll take it, and we'll both do it, and I'll reaffirm what I've been saying all these years and not what I've been telling her, blah, 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 blah. Ordered the test. They weren't cheap. And they came in, and the same day we gave her blood samples, and we sent them back in right away. We were both kind of excited to see what was up. I think she was excited to prove to me that she wasn't allergic, and she used that term. But it's sensitivity or reactivity. It's not necessarily an allergy. Allergy is different. And if we look at a bee sting, if we get stung by a bee and we get swollen, that's a reaction. If we get stung by a bee and go into anaphylactic shock, that's an allergy. But she used the word allergic, and I just went with it for a long time. So I wanted her to see that she wanted to prove that to me that she wasn't, and I was wanting to prove to her that she was to some degree sensitive to it. The test results came back, and I got my notification first because she sleeps in, so I got it in the same morning she did. And the results come in high, moderate, mild, and low. So 4 categories: high, moderate, mild, and low. And this is where the talk about who is over, because this was the eye-opening thing for me. Essentially, who came back with nothing in high and nothing in moderate. She's many things in the mild, and to include wheat and gluten. So is she sensitive to gluten and wheat? Yes. Is she allergic? Is she very reactive to it? No. But that's the thing. She is as reactive to gluten as I am. I don't want to get off track. So again, that's it. Like the discussion about who and me trying to prove to her, like I kind of proved to her that she's reactive to gluten, but because it's under mild, she thinks that she proved to me that she's not. Mild is mild. And so 7 of the top 10 causes of death in the United States are attributed to chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation, how do we do this? A mild exposure to an irritant, repeated mild exposure to an irritant. So if we eat something that we're mildly reactive to for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's considered constant exposure to a mild irritant. That will lead to chronic inflammation, which will lead to 7 of these 10 diseases. So with that in mind, what the sensitivity test is looking for is an antibody that your body thinks like, oh, what this person just ate is bad and we need to attack it. That results in inflammation, right? The same thing with a bee stings and injects venom into your skin. Your body attacks it to get control of it. It's your body's defense system. So if your body goes in attack mode when you eat food, that's bad news, right? That's bad news. Like, that's what you want to avoid. Most common causes of inflammation or just reactivity, in my opinion, or what I thought in my research, was wheat and corn and soy. And I really thought, here's where I'm like, my mind is blown. I really thought that wheat was the devil. I thought wheat was the worst. And all throughout what we call the paleosphere, people talk about how if you can indulge every now and then in something, if you like sweets, blah, 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 go ahead and eat something but never eat wheat. Like, if you're going to have a cheat day, go ahead and cheat. Eat tacos, eat some tortilla chips. But do not, under no circumstances, eat wheat. And that's what I believed for a long time. And for the longest time, I didn't even eat sweets. Like, I didn't eat things made of tapioca or brown rice, sugar, or corn. I avoided those things like the devil, which is hard. You're talking about having to avoid eating tacos. But eventually I gave in. I started treating myself. And I remember one of the first things I ate were these chocolate crinkle cookies at a place called Caldi's here in St. Louis. And they were delicious, son. And every Saturday or so, I would go in and get these cookies, and then I would sit at the computer and read and write. And then later that afternoon, I would go and get a gluten-free pizza. And I thought I was doing myself a favor because I wasn't eating wheat. Well, let's go back to just a few days ago when I got this food sensitivity test. The 4 categories are high, moderate, mild, and low. Where does wheat fall in and gluten? Under mild. Do I have any foods that fall under high and moderate? Yes, I do. One falls under high reactivity, and it was, ready? Cashews. Under moderate was brewer's yeast. So drinking beer is bad for me. Kind of knew that. And almonds. So let's just not talk about brewer's yeast. I don't think any good comes out of drinking alcohol anyways, although I love it. But let's talk about cashews and almonds. Let's talk about the food that I thought was an acceptable replacement to wheat. Let's talk about the food that I bought in bulk and kept under my van during those 2.5 years that I lived in my van and ate as a meal or as a snack, always on the hand. Just reach under my seat, grab a bag, reach in there and grab a handful. Let's talk about the food that I thought, oh my God, I'm so hungry right now. Before I go to this meeting, I have to go into Natural Grocers and grab their salt and pepper, black pepper and sea salt cashews. Let's talk about the food that I insisted people use to make cookies and scones and cakes and everything else as an alternative to wheat, because I thought that wheat was doing me more harm. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Cashews and almonds are worse for me to eat than wheat. So, and I kind of knew this, right? I've always said, listen to your body. That's what I put in my books. It's one of the things I stress. Listen to your body. Like, when you're full, stop eating. When you're hungry, eat. And there were times when I got past my super clean stage and started eating things and would eat cashews and get really bad cramps and a little bit of upset stomach, maybe some diarrhea. And I'm like, oh, it can't be cashews. Cashews aren't wheat. Like, I was just in complete denial because I was so focused on the fact that I thought wheat was the devil. Cashews are okay because they're not wheat. Also, whenever I ate almond floured anything, almond floured cookies, almond floured scones, almond flour, it resulted almost immediate result in like bad gas. And I was in such denial that I said, "Oh, it's the sugar," but I was reacting to almonds, and especially when you consume almond flour, you're consuming a high quantity of almonds. Like eating a handful of almonds is one thing, but eating a couple scones made of almond flour, it takes a lot of almonds to make that. So it's my point to all this is for the longest time I've really been wondering what's wrong with my health. Why don't I feel like I did when I started eating paleo back in 2011? Especially in this last couple years, why do I feel kind of blah? Like, where's my energy? I don't have the energy. I've tried to get out there and do some trail running and all kinds of stuff. Like even my energy to do calisthenics or rock climbing, this is all just gone. And I felt bad and horrible. And I'm pretty sure it's because I was eating foods that I thought were good for me, but actually weren't. And if it wasn't for this food sensitivity test that I kind of jumped on board and did for a completely different reason, right, to get who to do it, if it wasn't for this food sensitivity test, who knows how long I would think I was being safe? Who knows how long I would continue to, bread my chicken in almond flour, eat almond flour cookies, drink almond milk. All this time, I'm doing that very thing. I'm exposing my body to an irritant, causing inflammation and leading to all the other things. Like imagine like inflammation, chronic inflammation leads to one of the things on the top 10 list is diabetes and cancer. And so imagine me thinking that I'm eating safe and foods that are going to prevent these diseases that run in my family, especially diabetes. And here I am getting older and I'm eating these foods thinking that I'm safe and I'm doing my body good, and all the time I'm not. All the time I'm eating something worse for me than the actual wheat and gluten that I thought was bad. Now, I have to make it clear, I'm not saying wheat is good for you. Go out there and eat wheat. I still can't eat it, right? Because it's still a mild irritant. The difference is that all this time I thought I was eating something safer, and I wasn't. I was eating something that's actually worse. When it comes to cashews and almonds, I was eating something that is actually worse. So imagine, who making all these Christmas cookies. I'm like, oh, it sucks that you're making all these cookies and I can't eat them. And then encouraging her to make some stuff for me with almond flour. And then they're like, not that good of cookies. And I'm like, well, I'm going to eat them because they're made of almond flour. They're good for me, like an idiot. And I could have just indulged in the regular wheat cookies and they would have been better for me than all the fuss and everything else that I made about the stupid ass almond flour cookies. I'm going to include a link to the test. I really, I've heard people do it. I've never, the only time I've heard of people taking a food sensitivity test is when they've had issues with IBS and all kinds of problems and obesity and just all kinds of issues. And eventually a doctor would say, I'm going to give you a food sensitivity test. And then when these results come back, and these people, essentially their life changes. Because they're like, oh my God, I eat this all the time. Like, it's eye-opening. Again, here it comes from a reliable source, right? Their doctor. Like, never mind, I was telling people not to eat that. You shouldn't eat this. You shouldn't eat this. Perfect example is somebody who I've known a while ago, and she saw all my actions through Facebook, and she thought that I was crazy for not eating this, and like, but it's so yummy, blah blah blah. Well, she's been sick forever, and overweight, and frustrated because nothing was going right, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. The doctor gave her this food sensitivity test, and she comes back. She goes, "Oh, I'm highly reactive to corn and wheat, and I can't eat any of this," and blah blah blah. And I was like, "I told you, motherfucker." And she eliminated these foods, and her life changed. She's almost unrecognizable, and she feels better. And my point is that I've only heard of these food sensitivity tests being given to people after by doctors after months, years of frustration and inability to diagnose or help alleviate symptoms or problems. I did not know that it was available. Something you can just order through the internet and give your blood samples. And so, I mean, as technology improves, they need less blood. It's easier. You just give yourself a few. You need 5 good drops. So you prick yourself with a lancet, and you squeeze the blood so that it drips onto the test. They need 5 good drops. I did mine, and I helped who do hers. It was fairly easy. And I forgot what it cost. Let me see if I can choose a test. Food sensitivity test. $159. All right. If you use the link that I'm going to supply you, you can get 20% off your purchase. That is like $30 or something, right? So that's not bad. And I didn't get $30 off, motherfuckers. And the thing is total transparency here is it's an affiliate link. So I'm not going to get any money per se, but I get Amazon gift card. So if you get this link, you get 20% off, take your food sensitivity test, change your life. I will get a $35 Amazon gift card, homie. And that will buy diapers. I got a baby boy on the way, and I need to buy diapers. And I need to buy a breast pump. And I need to buy packages for baby food. And these wipes that go in. These things, you put the diaper in this thing, and this thing, there's liners, and they smell good. I don't know, but I got to buy those. So if you decide you want this, you do me a favor, you use this link, you get 20% off. I get a gift card to Amazon, and I can order some diapers and a diaper genie. All right. I've never really pushed anything on people like this, but it's really the fact that you can do this for just over $100 and get the same results. You don't have to go to a doctor. You don't have to do it. You could just look and see these things that you were reactive to and just stop eating them and see what happens. If you do this, if you get some results, if you need some help, if you want anything, just reach out to me and I will help you out. I think that's it. I think that covers it. Folks, I appreciate you tuning in. I'll have a link to this 20% discount. I will also have a link to the article that I wrote about this, which inspired me to write this podcast or make this podcast. And I will have, a link to my author page on Amazon too. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you later.